But when we look at the landlords, we don't use those same standards. Landlords in New York have been making a 12% return on their investment on average.
How much should they make? What's fair for the landlord to make if you don't like 12?
I got stopped by a cop who thought I was like making fun of Mao Zedong, which I never would and never will.
We need to start paying more attention to him because Democrats are getting closer to power. They've been out in the woods for a few years now since Donald Trump won, but they are coming back. All right, what's up, everybody? Hasan Piker has been in the news a lot lately for some more of the crazy shit he's been saying. If you guys don't know who Hasan Piker is, he's one of the biggest voices for the online left. He's essentially the new Democrat cultural leader, but he's a Nepo baby. He got his start working for his uncle, Cenk Uygur, over there at the Young Turks network. Then he decided to get into streaming. He wanted to go on Twitch and compete with some of the right-wing voices, provide a radical left-wing voice, and he started saying some crazy shit, and then he just started getting more popular. So he started saying things that were crazier and crazier and crazier until eventually he was saying things like America deserved 9/11, that some women are deserving of sexual assault, and all sorts of crazy stuff. And so then he started getting millions of views, and the leftists wouldn't denounce him, so he just kept it going and going and going. And so all of that attention and all those comments finally culminated in one of his craziest lines yet. And we're going to watch the video here so you guys can hear it yourself. I really don't know what the context for him saying this was. It sounds like he was in another country and the police were kind of giving him a hard time about making fun of Mao Zedong or something, but let's just listen to the clip here.
I got stopped by a cop who thought I was like making fun of Mao Zedong, which I never would and never will. Mao Zedong is a one of the great leaders of this world, okay? A man who changed the entire universe.
And so real quick, I was just thinking, when he says one of the great leaders, he's not talking about like the great man theory where they're talking about, important men driving history. That's not what he's saying. He's like, obviously Mao Zedong was someone who was important to history. He's saying he's great in like the he's awesome context.
The entire planet. Okay. For real, yes. I mean, there was a lot of fucking excesses, let's be real, but the People's Republic of China would not exist without Mao Zedong.
So, number one, there were a lot of excesses. Yeah, no shit. That's one way to put the death of 100 million people, which estimates vary wildly, though. I mean, it's anywhere from like he killed like 40 to 100 million of his own people, which a $60 million margin or 60 million life margin of error is insane. But in rural China at the time, they didn't have great records. Especially the communists wanted to bury all the records of the people that starved to death. China's famous for lying about its country. So we don't know exactly how many died, but the low end estimates are 40 million. High end, 100 million. Absolutely insane. And Hasan Piker thinks he's one of the great leaders of history. It was kind of a weird comment. He's like, the People's Republic of China wouldn't exist without Mao Zedong, as if like a fractured China wouldn't be a good thing for the United States. Of course it would be. The United States is having to compete with China as being overtaken by China. And if China had, stuck to a bunch of different city-states like it was a long time ago, not just necessarily city-states, but different kingdoms, the world would be a lot better place. A giant China ruled by communists is a really, really bad thing. Unless you're Hasan Piker, where you're into that kind of stuff. But that's the guy who's one of the biggest leaders on the left right now. Again, he's the person I think is the Democrats' cultural leader. And he's here saying that Mao Zedong is one of the great leaders. And I don't think it's just a throwaway line. It's not something we should just go, oh yeah, Hasan Piker says crazy stuff. Yeah, we all know Mao Zedong killed, tens of millions of people. But I think he's serious about it. I think he really does admire Mao Zedong, not because of the Great Leap Forward, which was the period from 1958 to 1962, where Mao essentially consolidated all the farms and then took a bunch of the rural peasants, forced them to go into the cities, build factories. And that's what caused the famines that killed these, tens of millions up to 100 million people. I don't think that's what Hasan Piker is talking about. I think what he's talking about is what came afterwards, is why he really admires Mao Zedong. I think he admires him for the Cultural Revolution, which after all those, tens of millions of Chinese people died, the communists weren't that popular, as you could imagine. So they started what was called the Cultural Revolution, where the Chinese Communist Party started purging all the educated people, the teachers, the scientists, the professors, and brainwashing the young people into thinking all of their old traditions were bad and needed to be uprooted. All of the older people were lying to them and were bad people. Their religion needed to be completely uprooted. They were, oddly enough, they were denying the differences between men and women. That's something that, communists have done for a really long time. It's kind of interesting, actually, if you go back into World War II and look at the Soviet Union and how the Chinese were fighting. They made women fight on the front lines as well because they were trying to erase the lines of gender. And another tactic they used was lawlessness, riots, demonstration, trying to get the young people out on the streets to intimidate everybody else. And, desecrating the history, trying to go back and say, the history of China actually is something to be looked down upon because all the traditions need to be looked down upon. That all had to be ripped up so that the Chinese Communist Party could start anew and Mao Zedong could be, it was year one in China when the communists took over. That's what they wanted to do. Get rid of all history. Mao Zedong is the father of the country. He is their George Washington. Actually, he's more like their Jesus, essentially. Like nothing of note, at least from a divine perspective, was coming before that. And the communists just had to get rid of everything. And I think this kind of sounds familiar, right? Like we're seeing a lot of, I think Hasan Piker admires that because that's the template the left is using here in the United States. Destroying religion, allowing riots, BLM, the lawlessness, trying to go after the cultural institutions, go after the young people, the universities, making sure that young people are radicalized, getting out on the streets, becoming leftists. Thankfully, we pushed back against that, and it's not as big of a problem as it used to be. But you can see this is the left-wing playbook. They've used this for a very, very long time. This was something that Marx laid out in the Communist Manifesto. It's a playbook Stalin went by, it's a playbook Lenin went by, and then Mao, who I think Hasan Piker is kind of showing here how he sees that playbook for the United States. And Mao hated the Chinese people, which is another thing. Hey, you can't kill 100 million of your own people without really hating them. He didn't see the Chinese individual as important at all. All he saw was the communist collective. And Hasan Piker and the left see Americans the same way. Individual Americans don't matter. They can be canceled. Their businesses can be burned down by BLM. None of that matters. It's all about the collective and liberal progress. And so we got to pay attention to what people like Hasan Piker are saying on the right, because a lot of people pay attention to him on the left. Like his videos, you can go search for him on YouTube. He gets like tens of millions of views on his videos. And it's not just people hate watching or making fun of him. You can see in the comments on his video he had there where he was saying how great Mao was. It's all just positive. All these just leftists loving it. They agree with him. And a lot of people listen to him. And so we need to start paying more attention to him because Democrats are getting closer to power. They've been out in the woods for a few years now since Donald Trump won, but they are coming back. A new Fox News poll, this was crazy. I couldn't even believe this, but this is from Fox News. They say in their most recent poll that amongst likely voters, they asked them, could Democrats better handle income inequality? Democrats have 22 points over Republicans on that question. Could they better handle healthcare? 21 points over Republicans. Inflation, 10 points over Republicans. The economy, Democrats are doing 9 points better than Republicans. Foreign policy, 7 points better than Republicans. Honestly, that one kind of surprises me. I thought with the Iran war, it would be more than that. But here's the craziest one. For government spending, people trust the Democrats more by 3%. All that is really, really, really bad. If people are trusting Democrats more on healthcare by 21%, Democrats are the ones that came up with Obamacare, which our healthcare system wasn't great before, but Obamacare has just been a disaster. And they still trust Democrats more on that. If you trust Democrats more on inflation, things are going really, really, really badly for us. This election may be ugly for the midterms. So with a cultural leader like Hasan Piker, with Democrats getting more and more popular, we got to pay attention, which is also why we're going to watch another video here from the DSA. I said that Hasan Piker doesn't really make the economic arguments that Mao made. The DSA does. The DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, are the ones that are making the leftist economic arguments. And so we're going to listen to the leader of the New York City Democratic Socialists of America on Fox News, essentially just openly endorse communist economics.
Tenants, and we say they have to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. They have to be responsible financially. But when we look at the landlords, we don't use those same standards. Landlords in New York have been making a 12%.
First of all, yes, we do. Banks hold landlords to standards. So I don't know what this dude is talking about, but whatever.
But when we look at the landlords, we don't use those same standards. Landlords in New York have been making a 12% return on their investment on
How much
average.
should they make? What's fair for the landlord to make if you don't like 12?
They're complaining that 12 is not enough. And we don't think that anyone should.
So that's kind of the crux of the whole issue here. Martha McCallum, jumps in with a great question. I didn't think she had a great interview, honestly, but this part of it is pretty good. That's kind of the whole crux of the point. He's saying, 12% is too much, which is crazy because 12% return is not very good. I think the S&P 500 did like 20% last year. So if 12% is too much and he's willing to seize your property over that, this dude would be willing to seize your entire 401k and stock portfolio because he says 12% is too much. And she asked the right point, like, hey, well, if you say 12% is too much, what should people be allowed to make? And he can't answer truthfully because what he really believes is 0%. There shouldn't be any private enterprise. There shouldn't be any privately owned housing. The Democratic Socialists of America openly say they want to decommodify housing, meaning they want to take everybody's property and turn it into public housing. So good response by Martha McCallum here.
Have a constitutional right to double-digit returns on their.
I don't like 12.
They're complaining that 12 is not enough. And we don't think that anyone should have a constitutional right to double-digit returns on their investment. That's why we've implemented.
No one should have a right to a double-digit return on their investment.
No one has a right. That's not. No.
What are you talking?
No one's in that. That's not in the Constitution. But what we see is that when we implement a rent freeze, we have landlords who are crying that the government is going to put them out of
Well, they're
business.
trying to run a business, and they're trying.
Look at that dude smile when he says their landlords are crying when we implement rent freezes. It's just The dude's disgusting. He just knows the shit he's pushing is theft. That he's pushing for the government, taking their guns, and I don't want to say taking their guns. I mean getting armed agents to go steal people's property, which is all this is. When you're saying that we're going to have rent freezes, that's all just to lead to seizing property. And the rent freeze itself is its own violation of people's property rights because it's your property. You can charge whatever you want for rent. If people don't like it, they don't have to live there. And the government has destroyed New York City in so many different ways, why their property prices are out of control because, and we're going to come back to his whole constitutional right thing, but just real quick, if you have an issue with rents being they're too high, there's a few reasons that could happen. Number one, New York City is famously a series of islands. There's only so much real estate to be had, and a lot of people want to live there. So that's a constriction of supply itself. Then you have a lot of demand, prices are going to go up. So people don't like that. So then what they're going to say is, well, we want the government to set a cap. We want to set a rent ceiling there. So then what happens is investors see that, they see the rent ceiling. They go, why would I invest in New York City real estate anymore? They're going to cap my profits. And like I said, this guy's saying that real estate investors made 12% last year. You could have made more just putting your money in the S&P 500. And a lot of investors did. So what happens is those investors see, hey, my profits are going to be capped here because they're going to freeze rents on me. I've got rent ceilings coming up on my properties anyways. So I'm not going to invest in New York real estate. And then what they do is they say, okay, well, I'm not going to upgrade my property either. There's no reason to do maintenance. There's no reason to modernize the apartment because if my rents are capped anyways, I'm going to be able to get those capped rents, whether the apartment's a piece of shit or really nice. So what happens is then all the apartment buildings become dilapidated hellholes. And that's what New York City's become. And then you can see there, he says, well, the landlords are neglecting the property. Well, why is that? Because there's no profit incentive to fix the place up. So this guy knows nothing about real estate, not a single thing. But then I want to go back to his worst line where he says there's no constitutional right to double-digit profits. This kind of just shows, it gives the whole game away right here. I'm going to share with you guys the 9th Amendment, because actually we do have a right to double-digit returns. Let's look at the Bill of Rights here, and let's read the 9th Amendment together, because it's nice and short for us, thanks to the founders there. So it says, the enumeration of the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So and you know what? Can we get the 10th Amendment here? Let's read the 10th too. So the 10th says, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So the 9th and the 10th both clearly say that we do have a right to double-digit returns because the Constitution does not explicitly give the United States government the ability to regulate our returns. And in fact, in the 5th Amendment too, it also talks about our right to property. So this guy, number one, is flat out wrong. The 9th and 10th Amendment do tell the federal government, you can't come and regulate us in ways unless it's specifically spelled out in the Constitution that you can do. This was like one of the biggest debates the framers were having. The Federalists and the Anti-Federalists were arguing that if we did write down a constitution, that in 250 years, some communist like this dude would stand up there and say, well, if the rights aren't there spelled out in the Bill of Rights, okay, then they must not exist. Then the government can just trample them. And so the compromise was, okay, we're going to have this spelled out Bill of Rights, but then we got to add this 9th and 10th Amendment saying, hey, Just because we don't spell the rights out here does not mean that the government gets to go, make up all their own rules and trample your rights. The 9th and 10th Amendments say, if we don't explicitly spell out the government's ability to regulate you right here, then the government doesn't have the right to do it. That's reserved for the states and the people. It says it right there, but this dude knows nothing. He doesn't know a single thing. And the worst part about it is, even without knowing the 9th and 10th Amendment, he honestly thinks, reading, the rest of the Bill of Rights, that those are the only rights you have. You've got your right to free speech. You've got your right to peacefully assemble, and your due process, your freedom of religion. They don't believe in the Second Amendment at all. They've shown that. But he truly believes, unless it's spelled out specifically in the Bill of Rights, you don't have any other rights. That's it. They can regulate you and take everything else. Think about what's not in the Bill of Rights. There's no right to your property other than, what's spelled out in the 5th Amendment about due process. There's nothing spelled out about having the right to, parent your kids, meaning he and the government could just take your kids if they wanted to. There is nothing about owning your homes. The government could come and take that, turn that all into public property. You could just go on and on and on and on and on, where this guy legitimately thinks the government can just seize everything, just take it all. And that's why I'm saying that they admire Mao so much, Mao Zedong, because that's exactly what he did. The government came in and said, hey, you don't have any right to your property. We're going to take your farm. You don't have any right to decide where you live. We're going to uproot you and your family, and you're going to go work in a factory in a big city. You don't have any right to complain about it. They have no right to guns, which the Democratic Socialists of America want to abolish the Second Amendment as well. There was nothing. That's why they admire Mao so much. And you can just start to see it. And so their stance is, you're going to own nothing. You're going to be happy. The Constitution doesn't specifically say you have a right to your social media accounts or modern firearms or anything like that. So the government's going to take all that from you. You don't have a right to business. You definitely don't have a right to double-digit profits. They already said that. So if you've got double-digit profits on stocks, if your business makes any amount of money, nope. That's all going to be taken from you, because that's not spelled out in the Constitution. It's all just great leap forward shit. They're just going to take it all from you. This guy is one step away from saying, you're just all kulaks. We're going to put you in the labor camps. And, the Constitution doesn't say anything about your right to not be in a labor camp. So we're going to put you in one of those. The DSA is just a front for the new American Communist Party. That's it. And they have a long history of changing their names to try and make themselves sound more palatable. I mean, if you remember, like the North Koreans, they call themselves the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. That is the communist dictatorship. That's North Korea. That's not South Korea. That's the communist dictatorship up there. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea. The Democratic Socialists of America. They don't really want to, take all your stuff and institute communism. But if it's not spelled out in the Bill of Rights, sorry. And then even if it is, if we don't like it, we're just going to get rid of it, like the Second Amendment. So these people are getting close to power. And remember, a lot of those Democratic Socialists, they won their elections. They're going to be in Congress from New York City. So be prepared to listen to a lot more of these arguments. And the worst part is it's resonating with people. So we've got to fight against this stuff, or it's going to become even more popular. Next episode, again, I keep saying we're going to talk about Aber Kawas and the more religious aspect of this whole movement, because that's where things get a little different. Obviously, the communists are very much against, or were very much against religion. Now they've found a home supporting Islam. So we're going to talk a little bit about why these Islamists are out here supporting the Democratic Socialists and what's more going on. Thanks for listening, guys. That's it this time.